don't want to sound too cynical, but I think gaming kinda sucks in 2024. This isn't about stupid console wars or colossal gaming flops, but my personal relationship with gaming has soured a lot over this current generation, and a recent bad experience was the tip of the iceberg. Drama. Before we continue on, huge thanks to Bombas for sponsoring today's video. I know it's only October, but the holiday season is sneaking up fast. And if you're looking for a great stocking stuffer, Bombas is a great place to start. They make some of the most comfortable clothing in the world, focusing on core basics, such as these ankle socks made with a merino wool blend that feel very soft and will help your feet stay warm as the climate gets colder. Plus, I also love their premium weight t-shirts. They feel very high quality and don't wrinkle easily throughout the day, maintaining a clean and simple look. But best of all, Bombas products are thoughtful through and through. When you buy one item, they donate another to folks in need. With over 100 million items donated and a 100% happiness guarantee with your purchase, what's not to love? If you would like to check Bombas out for yourself and support the content we make here on Denki, head over to the link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen and use code DENKI20 for 20% off your first purchase. Once again, huge thanks to Bombas for sponsoring today's video, and now back to the show. Now, before I unload a whole lot of negative on you, I want to be clear, gaming is something I still love and want to keep on enjoying. For example, as someone that loves cars a lot, I play Gran Turismo 7 probably more than anything else. I'll spend at least 10 to 20 hours a week challenging myself by learning tracks and tuning cars that I've collected in the game to compare and maximize lap times. I mainly stick to single-player time attack, purely playing against myself, since I'm not really in it for the competition. I just like having my own fun and at my own pace. Alright, so now picture this. After a long day working here in the office, I'm all set for a full night of doing time attack. I boot up my PS5, and what the f is this? Offline mode? Turns out that evening, PSN was going through an outage, and boy did it severely cripple the game. To be fair, it wasn't a total wash. GT7 does give you some sort of basic arcade mode with racing as well as time attack, but you're only limited to using like 15 or so cars, as well as all of the hours that I put into car customizing and building my collection was not accessible, all thanks to the fact that the PSN was simply offline. The little bits of crumbs that they left for us to eat for dinner basically made for a boring experience, and all this to say that it threw my motivation to game out the window. The more I started thinking about it, the more frustrated I got. After all, I paid $60 at launch and then some for the game because I got the freaking anniversary edition. But this is what made me realize that modern games are too demanding for their own good. And I'm not just talking about hardware requirements. Admittedly, as someone that's transitioned from being a more hardcore gamer in my younger days to a more casual one now that I have a full-time job and other hobbies that keep me busy, I found myself gravitating toward games that are simpler with direct objectives and have low investment time. For example, these days, on top of games like GT7, I also like playing shooters like Valorant. Sure, some matches can get pretty sweaty, but in general, the game allows me to jump in, have fun, and improve on my skills without the pressure of completing a massive storyline. Though, on the flip side of things, this does mean that I miss out on the trendy cinematic AAA title of the week. Here's a boomer thought. Am I the only one that thinks these huge games are too much of a priority? This might be slightly exaggerated, but the 20 to 40 hour campaigns that used to be my bread and butter back in the day have now turned into 80 to 100 hour commitments. Probably the most egregious example I could think of is Final Fantasy 16, which I bought at launch, probably put like 20 or 30 hours in, made it through what seemed like a couple of climactic moments, only for life to get busy and I had to pause my progress. And it's just been collecting dust ever since, but I don't feel like I missed anything, which certainly undermines the how many years it's been in development and probably the millions and millions and millions of dollars that Square Enix put into production. And surely I can't be the only one here experiencing this problem. The sheer amount of long-winded games in mine as well as other people's backlogs really makes me wonder how sustainable these games really are. And no, I'm not saying big games shouldn't exist at all, and I've certainly enjoyed my fair share of expansive campaigns and spent a ludicrous amount of time on them. But really think about it. Games are getting bigger than ever before, are more expensive to produce than ever before, take longer to produce, and again, these AAA titles seem to be coming out like every other week. It's overwhelming even for me just seeing it on my timeline. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, skill issue. Ken's just getting old. And honestly, you're not wrong. I'd be dumb to ignore the fact that this is definitely a me problem, and that there are people out there that have no problems keeping up with game releases and are completely enjoying themselves. But again, fatigue over big games hit me in particular very hard. It's a complicated thought to get across, but it's partly why I don't really like games these days. This is very much old man yells at cloud energy. But do you remember when you could just pop a game into your console and just start playing? No updates to worry about, no online requirements, just pure gaming fun. Truth be told, I miss those days a lot. And it's hard to imagine going back, of course, apart from playing some retro consoles. This point circles back to a core issue that I have with modern day gaming, which adds stress and friction to the experience. I'm talking about internet dependency. No, dear viewer, I am not talking about your morbid addiction to the screen. This is about the games and how they require constant communication with some server hundreds of miles away in order to enhance the user experience. I'm mainly bringing it up because I'm still f***ing salty about it, but why the f*** does a racing sim need to always be online? It feels like an unnecessary solution to a problem that could be easily solved with better design. Okay, sure, I get that Polyphony Digital, the creators of this game, would want to standardize competitive play in order to keep things fair. But couldn't they just segregate casual and competitive gameplay instead of making the entire thing dependent on an internet connection? I mean, God forbid a network outage lasts longer than a day, like it did in 2011 for the PSN. But what happens to GT7 then? Are we just left to play an overglorified demo that we paid $60 to $80 for? That's f***ed up. And this isn't even mentioning the whole discourse of video game ownership in this day and age, where the disk drive is going to be phased out of future generations of consoles in favor of digital downloads. Now, this is definitely a loaded topic that I'll only probably scratch the surface of here, but it is worth mentioning. Look at some of the consoles we have here in 2024. The PS5 Pro already comes default without a disk drive, though of course you can get it as an optional add-on. But even with these companies throwing us a bone, having a physical disk drive these days almost feels like we're huffing on some copium. Now, I'm not claiming to know all of the ins and outs of how games run on the Xbox Series X or PS5, but from what I understand, your console might install the game using the disc and/or online data, depending on the title. But beyond that, the Blu-ray that you insert into your console is merely a physical license that authenticates your ownership. With so much of these games requiring internet connections to servers beyond our control, it really makes you wonder how much of our games we actually own. Disc or not, the answer is unclear, which is frustrating, but more so for the long haul well after this generation's life cycle. On console, the best reference points we have that give us any indication of what we can expect come from wounds that still feel fairly fresh, namely with how Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony sunset online services for their legacy products such as the 360, PS3, and the 3DS. Their commitments towards the digital libraries of their users ranged from hopeful, especially on the Microsoft side, they might be fumbling this current generation, but their actual commitment towards backwards compatibility as well as game ownership is actually surprisingly great. All the way down to, holy shit, this is awful. It's a me. If we're looking on the PC side of things are a little better. The world would probably end before Steam shuts down given how large it is. But even for Valve's relatively friendly business practices for its consumers and community, its EULA can basically be boiled down to you own the license to play your games, but not the game itself. Now, this might be fine in the scheme of in Lord Gaben we trust. Lord Gaben we trust. And I believe Valve's been on record at some point to say that there is a plan in place to give people access to their games should the service be sunset in the distant future. However, considerations toward game preservation are treated more and more as afterthoughts and only get harder and harder as tech evolves and gets more complicated. That being said, if we're talking about frustrating gaming things in 2024, shut up. Boy, do I hate anti-cheat systems with a goddamn passion. I mentioned earlier how I like playing Valorant, but by far one of my biggest friction points with the experience has to be Riot Vanguard. Kernel level anti-cheat might ensure fairness in competitive titles and are a necessary evil, but the amount of stuff that it does to upset both anything and everything on my computer is frustrating. Hell, at worst, it'll lock you out of playing a game on an entire platform, like it did for GTA Online on the Steam Deck. I mean, props to Valve for at least giving users refunds as reconciliation for the inconvenience, and at least GTA 5 single player was unaffected. But yeah, this is yet another blip in the complicated relationship people have with games in 2024 that gets me thinking all cynical. I absolutely get that it sounds like I hate games as a whole, but the reality is I don't. In fact, a lot of what I'm saying here is me literally yelling at the clouds because I want to enjoy gaming as much as I did back when I was growing up, to rekindle that excitement that I genuinely felt back in the day. At least for right now, it seems a little easier said than done.